Just like you don't know what's gonna happen. Pretend Bear Grylls is there and he's gonna judge you if you're not prepared.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Booth. I'm Jade, and with me, as always, is my co host and producer, Heather.
And on this channel, we talk about wild stories from Comic Con vendors because Jade has her own booth, Tokyo Dog Designs, where she sells all those beautiful, colorful things behind her. And you should come and say hi to us because we would love to meet you. But today we are actually talking about not Comic Con, but actually outdoor events. I don't know. Have there ever been an outdoor Comic Con? I don't know
I
that that
mean,
would
I'm certain
work,
there probably has been. I've not been to
right?
one. So if you have
Yeah.
one, message me. Love to go.
Yeah.
So where we live in Colorado, there's a lot of outdoor events, and it's more than you would expect because Colorado has ridiculous fucking weather. Like the weather here is like snowing and raining and like literally can change within a day. I kid you not. We've had
Yeah.
days where it's been 80 degrees, and then the very next day it's 20.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
Where it's snowing in the morning
nuclear
and then it's
winter.
all melted by the afternoon. Like,
Yes, it's crazy. We get crazy weather, but apparently there's a lot of events out here. Now, Colorado's kind of known for hiking and fishing and walking and outdoorsy and blah blah blah. As you can tell, I'm not an outdoorsy person, so I don't really know why I live here, but
same. That's why we're so
it's
pasty.
that kind of thing. You're right. You're not pasty, you're porcelainy. It's
Oh, there we go.
different.
That's true.
Um, but with outdoor events, they can be really great. They can be really great for small business and especially artisans like myself. I kind of fall into the category of a maker, but I tend to be in the artist alleys and things like that at these types of events. I can be a standard vendor, but as we talked about before, there is a huge price difference between a artist and a vendor. So when
Yeah.
it comes to these outdoor events, a lot of times they're very cost effective. They might be $50 for one day, they might be 75. Sometimes there's a weekend thing where it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that'll maybe be $150. So sometimes they're really good pricing, and you get a different culture, a different part of the community that comes out to support us. When you're doing outdoor events, one of the things I highly recommend is having some type of covering. It doesn't have to be a tent. I think we've all seen those pop-up tents that are like super heavy and they look like an accordion that you're unwrapping and that, it's
Takes like
massive.
10
It's
people
like,
to put it up.
yes, and you have to have all these sandbags and stuff. You don't have to get anything that sophisticated. I've seen people out there with a single lawn chair and an umbrella. So, being able to just kind of designate your spot is all that really, really matters. Most of the time, when you do an outdoor event, they give you a 10 by 10 space. It's rare that they give you something smaller. I've worked within 8 by 10s and 6 by 6s before. For those of you that are commonly at, the Comic Cons, that our space as Artist Alley can be even smaller, might, even be like 4 feet. So, you're less squished in for sure at these
Yeah.
events. But there's just some things to keep in mind and prepare for. So the first thing I did for outdoor events is I actually bought a pop-up tent. The brand I can share, but if they want to sponsor us, they're welcome to. Behind the booth, talkbehindthebooth at gmail.com. I believe their
Sponsor
brand is
us.
called
Sponsor us.
Sponsor Us, is Alavantor. And basically, for those of you who have never seen one of these tents before, it kind of looks like when you get it shipped to you. Do you remember those water floaties that you would unwrap that had a wire in them? They came stored in a
Hmm.
big
Hmm.
circle, and then you unwrap them and toss them, and they became the floaty.
Yeah.
There's tents that do that as well. That's basically what this is. It's a giant loop, and you fold it in a figure eight and then fold it on top of itself to close it. But basically, you toss it open and then you put your hands inside. And I actually stand inside of it and I flip it over myself. And it's a six-sided kiosk. So you have a front window, two side windows, and then on the back side, there's an escape hatch that zips just like a tent. And that was the first thing I bought myself because I wanted to be shaded. As an introvert, I wanted to have my back protected. And I didn't
Yeah.
want people coming in, especially since I deal with so many kids. I didn't want them coming behind my table because I have scissors and I have drinks and I have hot things, because I'm, surviving out in the wilderness. So I see it. Um, and on all these tents, you can like draw with markers and stuff and wash them off. They're like, I don't know, a lot of people won't know what an overhead projector is that are younger than I am. Those of us that know what an overhead projector is, you use those kind of pens and write out menus and stuff. And so
Yeah.
they're very, very cool. They have a lot of space on the inside. And it's just like having your own little tent. I get more compliments on that tent and I get more people coming by my booth because it's so weird, because it's so different. And I just have a little table that I raise up. It is one of those tables that can get up to 7 feet tall, I think. or 6 feet tall, something like that. I only raise it up to my chest level because the kiosk is built that high. But at outdoor events, you're basically expected to provide everything for yourself: your own chairs, tables, tents, water, all of that. You don't really get provided with anything, and you also don't get help. People there are not there to help you set up and help you build your tent. You need to be able to do all that by yourself. If you
Yeah.
get lucky and you have a cool neighbor, they might help you. In some events, they will, but do not count on it. So,
Yeah.
unlike at Comic Con, where they provide you a table, two chairs, and a backdrop sometimes, or at least table coverings, or there's people like if you're missing shit from your booth, they will bring it to you. Outdoor events are very much like,
You're
you
on your
know,
own, kid.
on your own. Yeah, survive like a Boy Scout or Girl Scout. Like, get your ass out there and figure it out. So, I also got myself a comfortable chair. I know that sounds kind of like prissy, but when you're sitting outside, I needed a chair that was breathable because of being outside in the sun and sweating. And I also needed something that was also I could put a blanket over it and it would insulate me because like we
Mhm.
said with our weather here, sometimes it's warm, sometimes it starts out warm, sometimes it gets cold, and most of these events are rain or shine.
Yeah.
If it's too cold, they do not cancel it. If people don't show up, they do not cancel it. Um, there's also something that they do with these outdoor events that I'm not super fond of, or even when we say like local farmers markets and things like that, sometimes they're indoors, but it's the same idea. You have to bring your own tables, chairs, equipment. Nobody's there to help you. A lot of times when they have indoor events, they'll be at like a high school gym or something like that, or a YMCA, like a big area like that. You don't really get the big event centers. You don't really get like, the convention centers that we're used to at Comic Con. Sometimes it's like at high school. So you
Yeah.
never really know, or it's just in some parking lot somewhere. Um, so bringing your own foldy tables and chairs. I have a table that is a 6 foot long table and actually folds in half. So it's 6 feet, fold in half to I think 3.5 feet or something like that, or 3 feet and some
Hmm.
inches. And it's got a little handle on it. Um, and I know this is kind of crazy, but I got myself a collapsible red wagon.
I was gonna ask, like, you've got to do that because there's so much stuff you're gonna have to
Mhm.
carry. You don't want to make tons of trips, have to
Yeah,
hold everything in your arms. Those are
yeah.
nice.
And a lot of times they don't let you park in the same parking lot as the event location, unless, yeah, really, they don't want to let you do that unless it's a trunk or treat or something, because they want to have close parking for customers. So they make you park way the fuck over there. Sometimes they allow you to drop off, sometimes they don't. So
Yeah.
I have one of those collapsy wagon things that you see a lot of people that go to the zoo and stuff.
Hmm.
They'll have like a little cover on them. They put their kids in there.
Yeah.
I have a basic bitch one. I think I spent maybe $50 on it, and
Nice.
it's got giant tires and they have like little locking mechanisms on them. By the way, use those. I tried doing it without that and I was putting stuff in. I turned around and then my cart was gone.
That's rolling away.
Yeah. So I was like, well, that just happened.
Well, yeah,
So
and pay attention to
use
that too.
those.
You said the big tires, like get those big tires that can like go over rough terrain. Like you
Yeah.
don't want to get the little pansy ones that will only go on a sidewalk because if you're going to be doing these outdoor, you're going to be in a field somewhere. It's
Yeah.
not going to be like easy access to things. So
Yeah.
make sure it can handle it.
But that's also why it's so inexpensive comparatively. Like, you do something maybe like Fan Expo for a weekend, it's might be $300 to $500 for an artist booth. You do one of these things for 3 days and it might be $100.
Yeah.
So there is a discrepancy there. And of course there's a discrepancy in like how many people are going to be there, how much traffic they're expecting, blah, blah, blah. So, but a lot of the traffic you get from outdoor events is from people driving by and seeing you. So location really does matter with those. So have a comfortable chair, have a table that you can carry and that you can adjust. And then I actually bring spandex tablecloths. The reason I use the spandex ones is
Ah.
because they're so tiny and they look so pretty once they're on. And some of them wrap all the way down to the bottom feeties of the table. Some of them, there's one that I got that has little draperies. It looks like the stuff you see at weddings,
Hmm.
and I fold it up real tight, like a tight little ball. It's about the size of like a small volleyball by the time I wrap it up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get wrinkles. It's black. Like you can get it in like 80 different colors. I just chose black because, people spill things. Mostly me, I spill things. And then you just toss it
People.
on there. But some events like require you to have a tablecloth. I saw somebody actually have to pack up and leave because they didn't have a tablecloth. They were kicked out of the event. I kid
Oh,
you not. I watched that
harsh.
happen.
My
And I was looking
goodness.
everywhere because those of you who've been listening by now know that I have everything. I have extras of everything, and I did not have an extra tablecloth for them. And I felt so
Yeah.
bad because I would have just given them a tablecloth so they didn't get
Yeah.
kicked out. So, but they say these things. Make sure you read your contracts for these outdoor events. They'll say
We've
some
said this a
weird stuff in
lot.
there.
Read the
Read your
emails, read the
contracts.
contracts, read everything. Like they won't expect you to because most
Mhm.
people won't. So do it
Yeah.
and be extra prepared.
So one of the ones that I read, it said that you couldn't leave early, and if you left early, they were going to charge you $75 per hour you were early leaving. I kid you not. And because you have your credit card on file, they would just charge you. And they could charge you
Right?
because they wrote it ahead of time saying, yes, we will do this if you do this.
You
So
signed it. So
yeah, so make sure you read
interesting.
that stuff. If an emergency happens or if some reason you have to leave early, just talk to the coordinator. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be chill about it.
If
One of my
you're chill
flights,
about it, be nice.
yeah, one of my flights when I was in Portland got changed the day before to 3 hours earlier than I was supposed to leave.
Oh my
I will
gosh.
not say who the airline is, but it does happen to have two A's in the name. So you guys can figure that one out. There's a couple airlines that have two A's in the name. So just figure out which one I'm probably talking about. And so I had just go to Fan Expo was really nice to me. I went up to the coordinator and I was like, "Hey, man, Alex, I'm sorry. Our flight got changed." I showed him the flight change. He's like, "That's okay. You know, do what you got to do because I mean, I'm doing all of their events, and so you want to have a good reputation with that." And I was like, "I'm very sorry. If there's anything else I could do, I would. There's no other flight leaving. They won't let me change. I don't know what to do." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Just go ahead and go." And of course, it's on a Sunday, which is our second busiest day. I'm like, motherfucker, just drive me crazy with that. But read those contracts, make sure that you know what's going on. And some places they'll say, please don't pack up early because it looks bad for all of us.
Yeah.
It really is it's kind of rude. You know, if you say you're going to be somewhere from one time to one time, you should probably stick with that. But again, something happens. I was at an event where I was getting a cold and I didn't want to get anyone else sick. So when I was feeling sick and I could really feel it coming on, I was like, I should probably go. And again, went to the coordinator. I'm like, I think I'm getting sick. I think I should go. And it was right around the holidays. It was one of those like Christmas shows in like the beginning of December. I was like, I don't want to get anyone sick. There's elderly people here that are shopping for their grandkids. And they're like, no, that's
Right.
the right thing to do. They're like, we can't refund your money. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna pack up very subtly and leave. But one of the things I liked about that red wagon is I can put a lot of stuff in it because it is collapsible. So I can collapse it down, but I also just leave it open and I just like throw junk in there and it helps me pack up and unpack very fast.
Yeah.
And bending over a lot is not always fun. But one important thing to remember about tents, and again, when you're doing outdoor events, you want to make sure you have insurance. A lot of places, especially for outdoor events, require you to have insurance.
Hmm.
Sometimes up to 100,000, sometimes up to several million, depends on the event itself. Um, they require you to have 45-pound sandbags or water jugs. Sometimes they won't even allow you to do water on each corner post. And that's to prevent the wind from knocking your tent over. In Colorado, we have a lot of high winds that come
Yeah.
out of nowhere, and it's called usually in the contract will say gust of winds, and that's what it is. It just will literally pick up your tent, and because we're literally right next to each other, it'll knock your tent into somebody else's tent or onto somebody, and so there's that. Well, with my tent, it has 6 sides and there's no posts, and what came with it were sandbags, and so I have about 20 pounds of sand in each corner.
Yeah.
Some places also won't let you stake in. That's one thing to keep in mind. Even if it's in a grassy field, they won't let you put your stakes in to keep your tent down because it can damage it.
And it's
There
a
could
tripping
be
hazard.
tripping hazard. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for them to say no. But my sandbags, there's a little piece that comes underneath the tent that because it doesn't have a floor necessarily,
Yeah.
but it's got about a foot worth of extra tent that you put the sandbags on. And then if I can, I tie my wires that would normally be staked in into each other and
There you
then
go.
underneath sandbags. So there's additional support there. I've also found that I am just tall enough that if wind starts to pick up, I can grab the edges and hang on to it so it doesn't fly away.
You're not going
Um,
anywhere.
yeah, not going anywhere. But I also will take my little red wagon, and that wagon is freaking heavy. It is very heavy for what it looks like. Those of you
Yeah.
who push them around like empty, they're heavy. And then when you put stuff in it, they're even heavier. So I'll actually put them on the side that I think is going to receive the most wind. And I'll put
There
the
you go.
tires onto it because it's about as wide as one of my panels. And then I put the sandbags as well. And then I tie things to that. So, and my tent is small. I think it's a 6 foot. across one. There's one that's I think 8 or 10 feet. I have the itty bitty one because it's just me and my tiny little table.
Well, and then you
Um,
can always fit it no matter what size, what like
what
area
size
they
I'm
give you.
given. Yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty flexible with my neighbors too, because I'm like, I'm only going to be in here. So if you guys need extra space, take it. I don't
Yeah.
care. And, usually when I do that kind of stuff, I get, snacks or food, or they check on me, or they let me pee, all the things that we talk about that we have to deal with when it's just by ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, and so having the weights down, I have had 3 different fire marshals approve my tent. So, and like I said, sometimes they come by randomly, sometimes they're scheduled. So the last outdoor event I did, the fire marshal was supposed to be there between 9:30 and 10, and he most certainly was. And he came by and he's just like, "Oh, it's a cute setup you have. Where'd you get it?" And I was like, "Oh," because I didn't know who he was. I was just talking to him like he was any other person. I wasn't
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Mr. Fire Marshal, how is your day, sire? What can we do to appease you today?" I didn't do that. I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Because some people really kiss ass with these
Yeah.
things
And they
because,
can tell they don't like it.
yeah. And so I'm like, oh yeah, it's this. I got it from this website. And I'm still waking up and coffee hasn't completely kicked in and I'm almost completely set up. He's like, so how much do the sandbags weigh? I'm like, oh, they're about 20 pounds each. And I've got, 6 of them. He's like, okay. He's like, how much does the wagon weigh? I was like, oh my God, so much. I was like, if you could move it, I'd be impressed. Cause I had the little brakes pushed down and everything. He's like, looks good. He's like, you passed. I was like, great. What did I pass? Cause I had no idea who he was. And then I saw on the upper part of his pocket, it said fire marshal and it had his name. I was like, oh, you're the fire marshal. He's like, sure am. I'm like, I just thought you were very curious about my tent. Like
Right?
I thought you're just another vendor interested in my tent. And I have so many vendors come by and ask me about my tent. So aside from having those basic things, make sure that you have water. I cannot emphasize that enough. I know water bottles are terrible for the environment. There are other ways to store water and keep water. I always have an emergency case of water in the back of my car. That was because I used to drive back and forth between Colorado and New Mexico a lot, and I was worried about getting stranded because the
Hmm.
car that I had at the time was not terribly reliable. So, but I always have water. I have bartered with water. A lot of vendors and food trucks will have water, but they'll charge for it, or they may not give it to you, or they might run out. I got heat stroke once at an event, and what had happened is I was refilling my water bottles. Those of you that know me that know how much I recycle, I was refilling these plastic water bottles, putting them in the freezer, and using them to cool myself down. I mean, I had USB plug-in fans going. I had ice packs. I was eating snow cones. I was doing everything I could to stay cool, but it was like 100 degrees in Colorado. And one
Ugh.
of the downfalls of having a tent is that it traps the heat underneath it.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to stay cool in there. And everyone was sweating to death. It was for one of the carnation festivals or something like that. And I had forgotten my water bottles in the house. I was exhausted. I was tired. And by the time I got there, I was like, oh man, I don't have my water. And so, and a lot of these outdoor events, especially when they're really big, they'll have EMTs and fire support and things like that on site. There will always be some type of security or police presence at the very large events. This event, I think, had about 2,000 people in Wheat
Yeah.
Ridge. So there was a lot of people, and I wasn't feeling well. And one of my booth friends, who I'd given water to the day before, she's like, "Hey, you're not looking so good." I was like, "Yeah, I'm just really hot." And they're like, I'm gonna go see if I can grab an EMT for you. And they did, and the EMT looked me over and did all the stuff that they do to check me out. He's like, "Yeah, you've got heat stroke. You need to go cool off and probably go home." And I was like, "Oh, snap." So and I literally only had 1 bottle of water to last me the day. And
Oh,
previous days I'd gone
jeez.
through about 10 bottles of water to
Yeah.
stay hydrated. And I was like, for personal information, I was using the bathroom almost none at all because my body was absorbing all the water. Like that's
Yeah.
how hot it was. And I was just going to push through the last day, and then I ended up having to be sent home.
Yeah.
So the EMTs were very nice to help me break down my booth and get all my stuff in the car. And then they had me cool down in the car for a little bit. And they have those snap packs, those ice
Yeah.
packs that you break
That'll like
them and they
freeze
get
almost
really cold.
immediately.
Yeah. They put it on the back of my neck, cooled my spine down. My little lizard brain got all cool.
Yeah.
And then I went home. And so it was one of those things that I didn't think about. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
And it was a very dangerous mistake because
Yeah.
you can die from heat stroke very fast.
Yeah.
And because I
And
had a booth
if
friend,
people hadn't noticed,
yeah,
like, oh my goodness.
I might have passed out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know all the different stages of what happens to heat stroke and how it comes on. I remember feeling very lightheaded.
Yeah.
Um, Not hot though. I mean, I was warm, but I was like, oh, I'm just kind of warm.
Yeah.
But I felt very dizzy. And I know that there's
Yeah.
a bunch of other stages of heat stroke. And obviously mine wasn't that bad because I survived it. And, I was fine the next day. And there's treatments and things that you need to do.
Yeah.
The next thing I say is always bring sunblock. I actually have, and again, I know it's bad for the environment, although the one that I have is actually pressurized. So it's not aerosol, but they look like aerosol spray that you can
Yeah.
put on. And I use that like crazy. And I mean, those of you who are watching the podcast can see I do have a darker complexion. Um, but I burn like armadillo
Mm.
burn, like right here on my nose and on my cheeks every time. And even in the tent, I'll get burned through the tent because mine doesn't exactly bounce off all the UV rays. I also keep one of those really large, they look like little Japanese umbrellas, and they fold up and they pop up huge. And I'll
Yeah.
put those in my like windows and stuff, depending where the sun is. And so, figuring out what's going to work for you is great. But I put everything. My tent comes with a zipper, like a big zippy bag. I just throw all the extra crap in there. Like I have got
Yeah.
extra bottles of water, sunscreen, medication, headache medication, hydration packs, and a first aid kit. I always have a first
Yep.
aid kit in every single vehicle and bag that I own. And even for, I have some people running my booth because I'll be in Canada. For Colorado Springs Comic Con, they're going to have all the same equipment, all the same stuff. I basically am going to match my booth so that way they have what they need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't emphasize enough, get that water.
Right, because you won't have easy access. Like it'll be hard to basically get anything that you need, so bring everything that you need, like over prepare. You
Mhm.
can always leave stuff in your car if you're like, I really didn't need that, but bring everything, and especially water because you don't want to get heat stroke. You don't want to bring layers. I mean, we live in Colorado, so we're used to
Yeah.
that. Like we always wear layers, but no matter
Yeah.
what state you're in, like have a lot of layers for you to like be able to cool yourself off or to warm yourself up, like take care of yourself, because these are like it's hard enough doing a convention when it's
Yeah.
indoors when you're by
Yeah.
yourself, but when it's outside and you don't have easy access to a nice bathroom or water,
Yeah.
like things can get real really quick, so make sure you're like paying attention to everything that you need.
And a lot of outdoor events will have porta potties and they don't
Yeah.
have running water.
Yeah.
So hand sanitizer, running water like that. But I mean, the one that I was at where I had heat stroke, there was no water source. They were just food trucks. So,
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the spring me down with the, hose of the fire truck, there was really no way to cool me off.
Yeah.
Um, and this is just all stuff that I've learned from that I don't want you to have to go through that I've learned myself. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
Prepare for emergencies for sure. Treat it like you're going into like the great outdoors, like to survive on your own with nothing but like a pocket knife and will. Treat the outdoor events, especially like that. Just bring everything you could possibly need. And since you're not flying, most likely, you can bring more stuff. So
Yeah.
just prepare the best that you possibly can and grab the things you cannot live without,
Yeah.
because you might need to.
Yeah, just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what things you'll have access to. And like I said, pack your car as much as you possibly can. Put all those seats down, take the car seats out and put the seats down, because that's what I got to do. But like bring everything, anything you think you might need, because it's just like you don't know what's going to happen. Pretend Bear Grylls is there and he's going to judge you if you're not prepared.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and a special thank you to Nerdy Girl Podcast for sponsoring this episode. We'll see you next time.